The next one is by Netscope on data security in a world of cloud adoption. We've heard a lot of these terms going through in the last couple of days, and to demystify some of these connectedness of these topics, I'd like to request Mr. Gurinder Singh, Manager Sales and Engineering, India and SAARC, from Netscope on stage. Gurinder, the stage is all yours.
Very good afternoon, and thank you so much for giving me time on this podium with the respected dignitaries and the people sitting here. So I would talk about an interesting topic today that is more typically on the data security side. So we talked about in previous sessions that like we have to safeguard our networks from the hackers, but ideally we are basically protecting our data from the hackers. And when you talk about, the previous speaker said, like there is a lot of cloud adaptation which is happening today in a lot of organizations. And most of the organizations today, if I see, they are going through the digital transformation phase. So in that case, when you go through this digital transformation phase and you're adapting cloud, you're basically accepting SaaS application, you're opening the doors for the SaaS applications, you are putting some of your footprints from your data centers to the IaaS or public cloud. You're basically trusting the cloud in order to basically, you're trusting the cloud where you're putting all your crown jewels on the cloud. And the challenge with respect to data protection was always there. Like, but when you talk about when you move to the cloud, there are a lot of other factors or facets which come into picture when cloud is in play. So perimeter, I would say, was more easier when you want to protect your world from on the perimeter side. So the DLP solutions which were deployed on the perimeter, they were looking at couple of channels, like say email was one of the channel, web was one of the channel, and host was another channel, which was easier. But when organizations started this digital transformation 3 or 4 years back, when they started adapting these cloud applications like O365 or GitHub or G Suite, Salesforce, which were making their life easier, but there were a lot of security loopholes which came in when you talk about opening your doors for the cloud. Because now you started trusting cloud where you're putting all your crown jewels. Like say if I talk about Salesforce as an application or O365 as an application, I was basically trusting O365 servers which were outside my perimeter. So what kind of security controls do we have on those servers? Whether a certain application which my BU unit has started using, whether it is risky or say safe. So those kind of decisions become very important, because when you're putting all those information or intellectual property on those servers, whether you will be able to protect them from the hackers or probably even the vendors who have some SLAs, like when you put those data on their cloud, they can easily share the data outside. So there are some SLAs which some of these risky applications have. So ideally when people started moving to the cloud, there was a lot of adaptation of SaaS applications. And I would say when you start adapting these SaaS applications, there are inherent challenges with respect to ideally trusting these applications with your data, and then basically sharing the information from these applications. That became very easier for any employee today, because you are able to do cloud-to-cloud transactions. You are able to, like say if I talk about a OneDrive, if you have a data there, you are easily able to share a confidential data to any enterprise domain with the help of a click of a button. So sharing and collaboration became very easier, as well as it also became a big challenge for the C-level executives, because they have to safeguard their enterprise not only at the perimeter but at the cloud level, where the cloud-to-cloud transactions started happening when they started this journey on the cloud. Similarly, when they started their movement to the IaaS platforms like AWS, Azure, or GCP, when I started safeguarding a lot of organization confidential data on S3 buckets or blobs, again, the collaboration part, the sharing part became very easier. And when you talk about these IaaS cloud platforms, they're very dynamic in nature. So there are multiple administrators which are basically managing these platforms. So there can be a lot of misconfigurations which we observed in last 3 or 4 years, which led to a lot of attacks on the IaaS platform side also. So ideally, the journey for cloud really helped us in achieving a lot of things with respect to simplicity, with respect to basically having a platform-centric approach where we can use the CPU power of cloud in order to make the work of employee very easier. He can be from any device. He can use all those applications or the SaaS application outside the perimeter. The life was easier, but the security pitfalls became more challenging for the C-level executive, and especially on the data protection side. So ideally, when you talk about in last year, whatever data was created outside the organization perimeter, as well as whatever data was shared outside the perimeter, it was more than when you compare it with the last decade. So in last 1 year itself, we have created that much data outside the perimeter. So you can see like what exactly is the kind of threat we are talking about. Because for any organization, data is the key jewel which has to be protected by the organization. And if that data is created outside, do we have a proper control in order to mitigate the risk which basically these SaaS applications are bringing in, or the SLAs inside these SaaS applications are bringing in? Or probably even for the hackers, cloud became a very easy target because a lot of these SaaS applications were whitelisted in all the security controls inside these organizations, and due to which it was very easy for the hackers to penetrate or permeate a particular network with the help of any exploit. So in terms of when you talk about some of the use cases which became very important when people started moving on the cloud, so one of the use cases which I can think of is multiple instances inside a particular application. Like say, if your organization is giving you O365 or Teams or OneDrive or SharePoint or GitHub as an enterprise instance, but you can easily, with the help of a credit card, you can easily create your own personal instance and you can start uploading the data on that particular instance. The traditional DLP controls or the solutions or even the host DLP solutions, they didn't have the visibility or the insight to go that granular where they were able to look into the API and JSON calls and would have been able to identify, okay, the data which is going right now, it's not the organization OneDrive instance or G Drive instance, but it is a personal instance of an employee where he's trying to sneak out all the data and he can easily leak out or download that data on his personal machines. So ideally, that became a big challenge for a lot of customers. And since they were also working with multiple vendors, there was an inherent challenge because they have to allow multiple instances of these business applications for, say, consultant, for organization, for their partner, or other vendors who are working inside their premises. So ideally, they wanted a solution which can basically identify the multiple instances on these applications, and you should be able to have different DLP controls or policies, which was not there in the traditional solution to look at. In addition to that, like if you talk about on the IaaS side, public cloud environment, as I said, like it's pretty dynamic in nature, and the sharing was easier. You can easily, with the help of a single command, you can share your complete S3 bucket data or transfer your S3 bucket corporate data to a personal data. So these kind of loopholes in the solution became very prominent for the hackers as well as the employees who were insider threat for the particular organization, and easily they were able to sneak out the data which was prevalent on S3 buckets or blobs. And the major challenge was majorly on the visibility side. Like when you're moving to cloud, what kind of visibility you have on the SaaS applications which you are trusting, or even the public cloud environment like AWS, Azure, or GCP, whether you're monitoring those environment, is there anything sneaky happening inside those environments? That was the question which a lot of C-level executives started asking themselves, because for them, it was very easy for them to move to the cloud, but the challenge became like how now I have started moving to the cloud, but what about these challenges which comes in when you start adapting the SaaS application or IaaS platforms? So ideally, I would say image leakage due to through images also became very prominent in last 2 years. When I talk about, there were a lot of screen captures which were taken on the endpoint, and they were, since a lot of organizations started adapting direct-to-net culture, so it was very easy for any user to take the screen captures and sneak out the information in the form of images. And since the data was not coming to the on-prem for scanning through OCR servers, it was very easy to sneak out a lot of confidential data in the image formats. And that is wherein required a different kind of thinking or approach, where how exactly we mitigate these kind of challenges which came in the organization when they started their digital transformation. In addition to that, there was another use case which also became prominent in last 3 or 4 years, where a lot of organizations, they wanted to give their private application access to third-party contractors in order to do some kind of business with them. Again, since there's a lot of confidential data present inside the private application which an organization would have, and he's basically giving that access to a third-party contractor, how do you safeguard or how do you ensure that he doesn't try to copy or paste the confidential data from those applications, or he doesn't download the confidential data on his personal laptop? that was another concern which was raised by the C-level executive when they started this journey on the cloud. So in order to mitigate that, if I see we cannot be totally dependent on the static approach which was followed by the traditional DLP solutions, which I said like are more focused on only 3 vectors, which were basically web, email, and host. They had to now think about a solution or an approach which typically opens their door for the cloud-centric DLP solutions or even solutions which are monitoring their IS channels. And therein, basically, the adaptive DLP approach started, wherein the new age solution, which are more adaptive and continuous in nature, and they are dynamic in nature with respect to identifying the user posture in a real time, and they, on the basis of the different posture a particular user has with respect to accessing the corporate data from his personal machine or from the corporate machine, there can be different set of controls which can be applied on the DLP side with the help of these solutions. So if I talk about from a traditional DLP solution to the new age DLP solution, they are more adaptive in nature, they are more dynamic in nature, and of course they use more ML/AI engines as well as the UB analysis as compared to the traditional approach of DLP solution. So ideally the industry is moving in that direction where more user-centric security with continuous posture checks, as well as a security wherein the DLP policies are not static in nature. So when they see like there is a the AV on a particular laptop has started working, there has to be a more restrictive DLP policy. So those kind of approaches started coming in with the new age DLP solution in order to mitigate the use cases which I was typically talking about in my previous slides. And so if I talk about Netskope, so we are leaders in this space, and we have created this platform, a cloud native platform with multiple microservices. And with the help of these multiple microservices, we are able to get the real-time contextual information of a user and a posture. And with the help of that, we are able to take a judicial decision based on the posture of the user as well as changing posture of the user, whether a certain kind of activity should be allowed for a particular user or not. So we have a risk-based approach where multiple microservices can talk to each other to provide or take a judicial decision whether this particular activity on a particular SaaS application or probably on a website or even on the private application or a thick client application should be allowed for a particular user or not. So based on the different risk profile for a particular user, we can easily ascertain whether this particular activity is risky or not risky for an organization, whether it is an insider threat or not. And on the basis of that, we can take a call whether this activity should be the upload or download inside multiple instances should be allowed for a particular user, or on the IS side should be allowed for a particular user. And we also monitor the posture for the IS platforms, like, because I said like the IS platforms are pretty dynamic in nature, and a lot of customers have already put in their ground jewels on the S3 buckets and blob. So we are monitoring these, the posture on the IS side, multi-cloud environment for AWS, Azure, and GCP in real time. And with the help of that, also we can take a judicial decision whether a particular S3 bucket is now public, so this particular user should not be allowed to upload anything or share anything from this S3 bucket. So these kind of decisions can be easily taken. So as I said, like we are leaders in the SSC space on the cloud security side. So if you need more information on the data protection side or the evolving data protection solutions which we have started offering to our customers who are going through this cloud transformation journey, we would be really happy to help you with it. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah.